Dear friend, it is once again my pleasure to host, together with the distinguished Secretary General of the Community of Democracies, the 33rd Governing Council meeting and the third such reunion under the Romanian presidency of the Community of Democracies. I welcome you all and I thank you for joining us and for being actively engaged in our endeavors. And I would also like to thank you for muting your microphone as well. Thank you. Mr. Secretary General Garrett, dear Thomas, I take this opportunity to convey to you once more my gratitude for your constant support and friendship throughout our cooperation, and to commend you for the active engagement in the work of our community. We count on your and Secretariat's indispensable support and look forward to continuing our salient work together. I have the honor to welcome the keynote speaker, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Canada, Mr. Robert Oliphant. I thank him for accepting to participate in our meeting and share his valuable perspective on Canada's initiative on the Declaration Against Arbitrary Detention in State-to-State Relations. Romania endorsed and fully supports this important démarche, which stands for universal values and is firmly grounded in international law. I thank you, Mr. Oliphant. I'm looking forward to your presentation. The observance of human rights, which stands at the very core of our community of values and principles, must be at the heart of all our actions, both nationally and internationally. Joint initiatives are opportunities to strengthen the international legal order and our commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to use any opportunity to reaffirm and reconfirm the essential importance of the international rules-based order and our joint commitments, especially under the pandemic conditions, but not only within these circumstances. We see that the very core of democracy is under siege and our values are tested. Liberal democracies are confronted with populist and authoritarian regimes that challenge their foundations through a mixture of transborder malign influences and blatant disregard for human rights. In the circumstances we witness, in order to prevail, as the US President Biden recently mentioned, I quote, "We need to prove that democracy works," end of quote. And people need to perceive that democracies deliver. And I could not agree more to that. This process can be achieved through at least two complementary dimensions. Firstly, we must prove to the external detractors that we as a community of purpose and values are united and firm in defending our common endeavors through cooperation in the community of democracies and in other like-minded formats. Secondly, as democracy is work in progress, we must continue to gain the hearts and minds of our citizens by demonstrating that democracy delivers, that it provides prosperity, safety, and well-being for all. On the first aspect, we need to consolidate our work within the community of democracies by standing firm for the principles of the Warsaw Declaration. By adopting last year the Bucharest Statement of the Governing Council in June 2020, at the 20th anniversary conference of the Community of Democracies aimed at reconsolidating trust in the principles of the Warsaw Declaration and to ensure our resilience to the challenges of the COVID pandemics, we offered a new impetus to our community. We highlighted that, I quote, "Democratic systems of governance built on respect for human rights, strong institutional capacity, transparency, and trust have the best basis to overcome crises and build back sustainably," end of quote. Therefore, we should see also opportunities in this crisis and reflect on the manner in which we can make our cooperation format fit for purpose and adapt it to the new challenges we face. As we previously agreed, and I believe that this could be the motto for our community, democracies are stronger when they work together. Indeed, as a community, our strength comes from unity. The COVID pandemic demonstrated the value of multilateral cooperation in addressing global challenges and the importance of international. As we get stronger, we should also and make our reactions more efficient and of nations that are backsliding, repealing the narrative that illiberal systems outperform democratic ones in mitigating the pandemic and the economic crisis. We need to forge a common agenda to address threats to our common values. We also need to react to democratic policies of abusive regimes, including those that are considering themselves part of Europe. There can be no impunity for grave violations of democratic values, fundamental human rights and freedoms. No attempt of destabilizing action on our partners or neighbors should go unpunished. And we should make use of our democratic toolbox strategic approach based on fundamental values, accompanied by engagement with civil society and human rights movements and advocates. While standing firm against democratic reverting of states, we should not abandon these nations and their peoples, but try to use our example. Demonstrate that democracy is the only form of government that upholds human rights and the rule of law. This brings me to the second dimension, to show democracy for all our citizens. In the countering threats to our democratic principles and values, we must act on all to ensure that all members of our societies. In countries, women are still lagging behind when it comes to, no matter if we speak about politics, business, or other fields. Women still have to struggle to reach decision-making positions, while unfortunately they continue to experience various types of discrimination and forms of violence. Promoting gender equality is not only a moral issue, but also a prerequisite to achieving inclusive, equitable, representative, and sustainable democratic societies, where no one is left behind. Women and girls' empowerment is a sine qua non condition for full functional and resilient communities, capable of overcoming crises and growing. The essential role of women's participation in public life and ensuring democracy and growth was enshrined as a core value in the Warsaw Declaration. And we have reiterated this objective in the Bucharest Statement by underscoring that, I quote, democracies are best equipped to mobilize and ensure that all elements of society work together, adapt to new circumstances, and maximize inclusive joint efforts for the full and meaningful participation of women and youth in decision-making. I see no coincidence that we refer to both the role of participation of women and youth in decision-making, as they are complementary, and gender equality is an objective that must be learned from young age. Dear friends, last year we celebrated the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and its platform of action, the most comprehensive and transformative global agenda for gender equality and women's empowerment. We must ensure their full implementation, goal to which the world leaders recommitted during the Generation Equality Forum. Promoting equal opportunities and treatment in law in practice, achieving institutional gender parity, eliminating pay gaps, fighting against discrimination and stereotypes, and ruling out violence, abuse, and harassment have been important goals for a long time now. Although progress has been made so far, this process has been uneven and slow. So we need to create a quantum leap for a steady and irreversible progress in ensuring gender equality and the full and meaningful inclusion of women and girls in all democratic processes. Efforts need to be encouraged for the like-minded to further persevere both nationally and through multilateral cooperation in achieving this goal. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize the importance Romania attaches to the promotion and protection of women and girls, including their full access to public life and leading positions in order to fully achieve gender equality. We are also committed to fight against domestic violence and violence against women in general. Romania implements targeted actions and measures through our National Agency for Equal Opportunities between Women and Men. Romania also integrates the gender dimension as an active member of UN, OSCE, EU, and NATO field missions. I am thus very glad to mention that in July 2020, we adopted our first national strategy and action plan on women, peace, and security regarding the period 2020-2023. At the same time, allow me to proudly reiterate that the Romanian diplomacy scores very high with regard to gender balance, as we have more women diplomats than men, and the representation is quite equal in management positions in our headquarters and abroad. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to advance the proposal to include a gender equality component in the next edition of the Community of Democracy Youth Forum. I also invite to share with us I also invite you to share with us your positive examples of lessons learned. Complementary to these frameworks, I also want to refer to the importance of the personal example in promoting this very important agenda. In this sense, I recall that Romania's president, Mr. Klaus Iohannis, has been a champion for He for She campaign since the beginning. This campaign invited us to reflect on the fact that it is in the power and the responsibility of all of us to make progress in achieving gender equality and equal participation. As I mentioned at the most recent Governing Council meeting last November, Romania is strongly determined to continue to promote within its mandate this cross-cutting theme and mainstream it across other activities of our community. I recall the event organized during our Community of Democracy presidency on March 5th, 2020 in Warsaw on women's empowerment and participation in public life. Dear members of the Governing Council, in the light of the above, it is with great pleasure to commend all the Governing Council member states for working on the statement emphasizing the role of women and girls in democratic processes that is to be adopted in this meeting today. I welcome this statement as I am confident that it will contribute to consolidating our work and will build the legacy of our democratic community of values. It sends the important message that the full enjoyment of human rights by all women and girls, both offline and online, together with streamlining the gender perspective across government and society, are essential for advancing democracy globally. I encourage you to continue the good work in all the formats of the Community of Democracies, including the working group on enabling and protecting civil society, the one on democracy and technology, and the group on women and democracy and on governance and effectiveness, as well as to actively interact with the International Steering Committee. We need to continue strengthening our working formats and to renew our membership to make our community even more relevant. With regard to the future Community of Democracies agenda, in the light of the ongoing pandemic situation, the Romanian presidency is envisaging to organize the 10th Community of Democracies Ministerial Conference in September 2021 in the margins of the 76th UN General Assembly high-level segment in a VTC format if the pandemic will not allow us to do it in physical format. In the meantime, I count on your valuable support and contribution in the preparation process of this conference. Romania will continue to stand for the principles underpinning the Community of Democracies by working together with you, member states, civil society representatives, and youth, and by encouraging further adherence to the Warsaw Declaration and supporting transitioning democracies. Romania is determined to continue to pursue throughout its presidency the goals and values of the Community of Democracies, especially now in the current disturbing context. Together, we will stay united behind our values. I thank you for your attention.